One of our top stories today coming from the healthcare sector, money problems at Partners Healthcare. Now executives are spreading the blame. Some are blaming Obamacare, others blame waste within the organization, insurance providers. It's a big mess. Either way, the company lost $22 million in operation cost alone, and that was just during the fiscal year of 2014. Mass General, Brigham and Women's, and North Shore Medical Center all performed well, but still, the company says it's struggling to make ends meet. According to Partners reports, their patient population was much sicker than other organizations in the state. Now, Neighborhood Health Plan is under the microscope. Executives say the insurance company failed to rein in their spending and instead put the heavy cost burden on the patient. Now, the company could lose as much as $92 million next year, according to some projections. Here in Boston, about 1,000 protesters gathered over the week, part of a nationwide day of resistance, they called it. It was prodded, of course, by grand jury inaction following the killing of black men by white police officers in New York and Missouri. Now, Governor Deval Patrick says the minority rights protests are disruptive. Mayor Marty Walsh's office points out that these demonstrations are becoming very costly. One estimate from his office put the total around $1.5 million. A little bit of irony, I suppose. The anti-police protests are actually resulting in overtime pay for the same police they're protesting. The first protest alone cost about $400,000. Now, the mayor says while he does support the right of protesters, he also thinks that more needs to be done to have constructive dialogue between the two sides. And elsewhere, a startling discovery on Plum Island. Something washed ashore. A man was walking his dog, not the other way around. A man was walking his dog there along his daily path when he noticed something very strange, covered up in the sand, something he'd never seen before. His dog started sniffing around and they found a rather large bone. Turns out it was the bone of a human leg. He alerted the police and they quickly discovered the rest of the human remains there in the area there. Now police are just trying to figure out whose body it is and who might have put it there. As it turns out, there are a number of people in the area that have been missing for a long time, and so police are not yet ready to comment on who the body might be. At this point, it's not yet known if the remains are those of a man or a woman. The beach was shut down for several hours, but is now reopened. An Andover man has a great Christmas present for several local institutions that helped to save his life and, as usual, the lives of so many others. Roger Damaris, a diabetic, woke up alive after a sudden illness, a heart attack, and a 911 phone call that sent him to two separate hospitals, and it was a whole problem there that left him with an induced coma for several days. Grateful, he made surprise visits to deliver $125,000 checks to the Andover Fire Department, the Leahy Clinic, and the Lawrence General Hospital. But when he showed up, a crowd gathered around him, people from laboratories, the ER, all over the hospital that remembered him. They came down just to greet him. Damaris owns the Spring Manufacturing Corporation in Tewksbury, and he says most of his children did call to say they were proud of their dad for giving that money away, even though they know it's probably coming right out of their pockets. And it's coming to a close. The One Fund Boston, of course, the charity for the Boston Marathon bombing survivors. Over the last year plus, the group raised nearly $80 million to help the families of the victims. Of course, 3 people died, another 260 were injured in last year's explosion, and some of that money went toward funeral costs, prosthetic legs, in many cases life-changing operations. Former Boston Mayor Tom Menino worked together with Governor Deval Patrick to set up the charity before Mayor Menino passed away earlier this year.